everybody. My name is Mariah Goodman, and I'm a licensed midwife, a queer mama of 3, and the founder of the awesome membership site for pregnant people called PregnantTogether. This video is going to offer you some tools to overcoming first trimester anxiety. It's a topic that I understand on a personal level. So when I saw pregnant on the Clear Blue test 12 days after my first insemination, I honestly felt shocked. Even though we were both midwives specializing in fertility care, neither my wife nor I had expected me to get pregnant on our first try. After the initial shock wore off, joy started to seep in, and we took a photo in the bathroom with our 2 older kids, the 2-year-old clutching the pregnancy test in his little hands. Soon after, I called my parents and my 2 best friends to share the news. I was pregnant. So when I started spotting the next day, I felt anxious. Was it implantation bleeding, or was the pregnancy not going to stick? The bleeding started in earnest 24 hours later, and the next pregnancy test that I took said unequivocally not pregnant. I didn't expect to feel so devastated after experiencing a chemical pregnancy. Even though I'd already been a midwife for almost a decade and had cared for hundreds and hundreds of pregnant women and pregnant people, and had counseled and supported folks through numerous fertility challenges and miscarriages, I didn't understand the enormity of that feeling until I experienced it in my own body. So when I got pregnant again the next month, anxious thoughts permeated my mind way more intensely than I'd anticipated. Every time I went to the bathroom, part of me expected to see blood on the toilet paper and was almost surprised when I didn't. The anxiety I experienced caught me off guard. As a midwife who firmly believes in the power of our bodies to grow and birth babies when we choose to, I didn't expect to have so much fear come up during my own pregnancy. I know I'm in good company in experiencing anxiety during pregnancy and especially during the first trimester. So that's why I've created this guide to overcoming first trimester anxiety. All of these ideas are things that either helped me or my clients get through the often anxiety-provoking, overwhelming, nauseating, exhausting, and beautiful time that is early pregnancy. So you can go from anxious to thriving during your first trimester and beyond. So this first section of the video is going to be more focused on providing empowering information. And then the next sections focus on tools for coping with and overcoming the experience of early pregnancy anxiety from a more emotional lens. Make sure to check out the PDF that comes along with this video, where you'll see all of this information written out in a way that's really easy to understand. So number 1, knowledge is power. Sometimes early pregnancy anxieties are tied to questions about what's going on in your body. I get questions from clients all the time like, is it normal to spot during the first trimester? Is there anything that I can do to prevent a miscarriage? Or is the baby getting enough nutrients if I'm only eating saltines? I believe that knowledge is power. So here are my answers to these very common first trimester related questions that can often cause folks to experience anxiety. 1. Is it normal to spot during the first trimester? Spotting during the first trimester can be normal. In fact, it happens in 15 to 25% of all pregnancies. Many folks experience implantation bleeding, which is pink or red spotting or light bleeding that usually occurs around 10 to 14 days after conception. We think that implantation bleeding happens when the little zygote that will become your baby embeds itself into the wall of your uterus. Not everyone notices implantation bleeding either, so don't worry if you don't experience it. Other types of bleeding during the first trimester that are not uncommon include spotting or light bleeding after sex or strenuous activity. Again, not everyone experiences this, but some people do, and it's totally normal. Subchorionic hemorrhage, which is when there is some bleeding under the growing placenta. This can range anywhere from a light or a heavy period and is actually relatively common. About 11% of cases of first trimester bleeding are caused by subchorionic hemorrhage. Depending on the severity of the subchorionic hemorrhage, it is sometimes associated with an increased risk of miscarriage, although honestly, the majority of people who experience subchorionic hemorrhages go on to have normal full-term pregnancies. Miscarriages are unfortunately common occurrences, which is probably a huge reason that most people experience first trimester anxiety. I know that was true for me during my pregnancy. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we know of that can prevent miscarriages. Almost all of them occur because of a genetic abnormality in the fetus that has no known cause. The good news is that the risk of miscarriage drops drastically after seeing a heartbeat on ultrasound, going from 20 to 30% to around 10% after that ultrasound. We can usually see a heartbeat on ultrasound starting at about 6 to 7 weeks of pregnancy. So you can always speak to your provider and see if it's possible to schedule that ultrasound during that time if you feel like it will be supportive to you and your experience of early pregnancy. So let's talk about when to seek care. Whenever you feel concerned about anything and you want to speak to your provider, if you are experiencing heavy bleeding that doesn't seem to be going away, or if you ever feel faint or lightheaded because of bleeding, or you're filling up thick menstrual pads in less than an hour. Another reason to seek care would be if you are releasing blood clots that are bigger than your fist. So question 2 that I get often is there anything that I can do to prevent a miscarriage? Unfortunately, there's nothing that we know of that can prevent a miscarriage. But the flip side of this is that there's nothing you can actually do to cause a miscarriage either. Many of my clients blame themselves in the event of a miscarriage, and I want to very strongly reassure you that miscarriages are no one's fault. It's just something that happens, unfortunately not too uncommonly, and there isn't a ton of information that the medical community has around how to prevent it. We do know that having untreated sexually transmitted infections or urinary tract infections or UTIs can contribute to miscarriage or preterm labor. So I always recommend doing those tests with your provider to make sure that you don't have any active infections during pregnancy. And if you notice any signs or symptoms of a urinary tract infection during pregnancy, contact your provider immediately. Signs of a UTI during pregnancy include pain or burning while you pee, cloudy or foul-smelling urine, feeling pain above your pubic bone or your lower back. This can also be a normal experience of pregnancy as well, or if you experience a fever during pregnancy. One other thing that I talk to my clients about is that it's best to take a prenatal vitamin that contains folate instead of folic acid. Folic acid is the synthetic version of folate. Many people can't actually metabolize folic acid, and it can actually block your body's ability to absorb folate. So having normal levels of folate is actually essential in supporting your baby's growth and preventing neural tube defects. So it may possibly be protective against miscarriage to make sure you have normal levels of folate in your body during the first trimester. So to address that, I always recommend getting a food-based prenatal that contains folate, such as Garden of Life's prenatal vitamin. You can also focus on eating folate-rich foods such as dark leafy greens, eggs, beans, liver, and seafood. So the third question I get all the time is the baby getting enough nutrients if I'm only eating saltines? The answer to this question is yes. Don't worry if you can only eat saltines, or in my case, grilled cheese sandwiches during your first trimester. The baby is actually mostly drawing from the nutrient stores you had in your body before you got pregnant. I know that many of us, myself included, imagine that we are going to eat super healthy during pregnancy, and especially during the first trimester, that can be really challenging. Just try your best to eat a balanced diet, but don't worry too much if you feel averse to eating anything green. Babies are profoundly resilient, and most people are able to eat a more balanced diet beginning in the second trimester. So I hope that this information offers a clearer map to some of the common first trimester concerns. The rest of this video is going to be more focused on the emotional side of dealing with anxiety. Anxiety often feels like fast-moving, swirling thoughts, feelings, or energy that can overwhelm our nervous systems. Sometimes people experience anxiety as a more physical, body-oriented experience, and others experience it more in their thoughts, or a combination of the two. In managing early pregnancy anxiety, I found it helpful to do something called an anxiety map to identify the core fear or concerns coming up. So here's how to do an anxiety map. You can get a journal or a piece of paper, And then write down the thought that makes you feel anxious. An example of this would be something like, is my baby okay? Try to slow down your thoughts enough so that you can write them down. What's the next thought or fear that comes up after having that original thought? An example might be, I'm afraid I'm going to have a miscarriage. Keep going. What comes up after this thought? An example of this from my own experience might be, I would lose something that I really want, and that would be grief. So I recommend, if it feels comfortable to you, to try to continue to do this exercise, writing down each thought on this anxiety map until you get a sense of the core feelings that your anxiety stems from. You may want to do this multiple times, or you may notice that there are multiple branches of your anxiety map. One thought stream that may take you to grief, another may take you to fears about becoming your mother, or something else entirely. Be gentle with yourself when doing this exercise. I know it can be intense, and it does take courage to be willing to explore your feelings in this way. In my experience, this is a helpful tool because it helps ground your anxious thoughts and helps you understand the root of where they come from and takes some power away from them. Once you have a sense of the core triggers and feelings related to your anxiety, send that part of your self-love. I promise you that you are in good company with millions of other pregnant people who have experienced similar feelings. With a clearer sense of the core feelings involved, you have a good shot of being able to attend to and heal them. Some of my clients have also benefited from creating affirmations, which is just a simple phrase that you can say to yourself to soothe your own fears. Something like, my baby is healthy, or my body is doing a good job, or I know whatever is happening is part of my life's purpose. These are some examples of phrases that might resonate. Also, if you feel really triggered or overwhelmed during this anxiety mapping process, maybe just pause and consider doing this with a therapist or a counselor or a trusted friend. It's not for everybody, and always make sure that your nervous system feels like it is in agreement with all of these practices that you're doing. So this is why I'm going to offer a lot of other tools, and you can pick and choose whatever resonates the most with you. So these are some tools and suggestions that have supported many people in overcoming first trimester anxiety, and to be honest, anxiety in general. I recommend choosing one or two that resonate with you the most and focusing on them for a week. If it doesn't feel right, or you feel ready for another one, you can choose a different one or two to focus on the next week. Meditation has been practiced by humans for centuries across many cultures. Much of what we understand about meditation today has roots in meditation practices originating in India, China, and Japan. There are so many benefits to meditation, and reducing anxiety is a big one. And there are also so many ways to meditate. I personally like guided meditations. You can find tons of options on YouTube or for free at places like insighttimer.com or even SoundCloud. Alternatively, you can practice meditation yourself. I recommend getting into a comfortable position and using your timer. I like to start with something short, like 10 or 15 minutes, because I know, okay, that's a doable amount of time for me as a not super experienced meditator. Then personally, I like to place one hand on my chest and another one on my belly. Then you can gently bring your attention to focus on your breath in and out, letting your thoughts go as if they're floating down a river. I've also provided a few links for guided meditations specifically for pregnancy anxiety in the PDF that goes along with this video. So EFT tapping, or emotional freedom technique, is a practice that is commonly used to support people who are experiencing anxiety and PTSD. And I personally find it super effective in managing my anxious feelings. So I'm going to demonstrate how you can do EFT tapping. This practice involves tapping on different meridian or energy points to release anxiety and restore balance to the nervous system. So in a nutshell, the process involves thinking of an issue that's bothering you. You can remember your core feelings from your anxiety map if that's helpful. And then assess for yourself how your issue makes you feel and rate this on a scale from 0 to 10. with 0 being, I feel fine, and 10 meaning I feel extremely activated. So once you have a sense of where you feel with that feeling, you can create a statement of self-acceptance related to your core feeling. So an example would be, even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap repeatedly on the edge of your palm below your little finger, and you say your statement. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. While you tap, you say your statement out loud 3 times. So even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. And you repeat that 3 times. So then you tap on the rest of the points on your body, one at a time. And while you tap, you say your statement over and over. So first, you tap on the top center of your head. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap on the inside edge of one eyebrow. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap on the outside edge of one eye and say your statement. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap on the bone underneath one eye. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap between your nose and your upper lip. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap between your lower lip and your chin. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap beneath one collarbone. So you find the notch beneath the inside edge of the collarbone and tap there. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then I like to tap in the middle of my chest. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. Then you tap under one armpit, about 4 inches below your armpit. Even though I feel anxious about my baby, I deeply love and accept myself. So after doing that process, you stop and re-measure how you feel about your issue. I often find that doing this process helps my anxiety level drop by at least 3 or 4 points. You can also repeat the steps if needed, and you can practice it as many times as feels helpful. And they've studied this, and it really, really works well for reducing feelings of anxiety. Okay, so another tool is exercise. Regular exercise has amazing benefits for our bodies and minds, and it's been clinically proven to improve anxiety. But let's be real, often exercise is the last thing people want to do in early pregnancy when they're often feeling nauseous and exhausted. Early pregnancy is not the time to take up CrossFit or start running marathons. But there are some gentle, accessible forms of exercise that might have a major impact on helping you overcome early pregnancy anxiety. Try walking for 15 to 20 minutes, doing prenatal yoga, doing 10 minutes of light weight training, or practicing Qigong. In the PDF that is attached to this video, there's a 15-minute Qigong practice for reducing anxiety that honestly really works. And there's also a link to a video of a 30-minute yoga practice specifically for reducing anxiety. Breathing exercises. So there are so many benefits to mindful breathing practices, especially when it comes to overcoming anxiety. Here are a few of my favorite breathing techniques. I recommend setting a timer for 10 minutes and trying each of them, one at a time, to see which works best for you. So one is square breathing. So you breathe in for a count of 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. Then you breathe out for a count of 4. And hold your breath out for a count of 4. So if it helps, you can actually imagine tracing a square while you breathe. So breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Hold it. So another breathing tool that I really like is belly breathing. So for this one, it's good to lay down on your back. This is totally safe to do in early pregnancy. And with one hand on your chest and the other on your belly, you breathe in and just let the air fill and expand your belly. Then you exhale through your mouth and you feel your belly lower. So this one's really helpful for reconnecting with your body, and I find it super helpful for navigating anxiety. So the third breathing technique is called lion's breath. And this one can feel a little silly, but it really is helpful for releasing anxiety. So for this one, you sit down cross-legged or on a chair with your hands on your legs or your knees, and you take a deep breath. With your exhale, you make a ha sound like this. You can open your mouth wide and stick out your tongue if it feels good. This one I like to do in private, but it really, really does work. So another tool or suggestion that I have is reducing or eliminating caffeine. So we know from the medical perspective that consuming moderate amounts of caffeine during pregnancy is considered safe. And drinking caffeine while experiencing anxiety is something like throwing gasoline onto a fire. Since anxiety is often linked to an overactive nervous system, and caffeine also stimulates our nervous systems, reducing or eliminating caffeine may be helpful in overcoming first trimester anxiety. If you're a coffee drinker, consider switching to decaf or trying an herbal coffee substitute like Dandy Blend, which has the added benefit of being great for your liver. And if you're a tea drinker, I recommend trying nettle tea. It's rich in iron and nutrients and is super healthy during pregnancy and kind of has that like nice bitter taste that something like a green tea might have. So another tool is professional therapy. Pregnancy is a wonderful time to start receiving professional therapy if you haven't already. It can bring up so much from anxiety to early childhood trauma and everything in between. If you can, I recommend finding a therapist who specializes in working with people during the perinatal period. It can be helpful to have somebody supporting you in this way during the intense experience of gestating a human being. I also know that a lot of folks don't have access to therapy, but there may be creative options to accessing mental health services that are covered by your insurance or places that offer sliding scale, community-based mental health support. As I mentioned above when talking about anxiety mapping, I have found journaling to be such a powerful tool in overcoming anxiety. When you let yourself freely write down your thoughts and feelings, you can express yourself without judgment. Sometimes it feels like a literal weight is being lifted off of me when I journal. So if you're new to journaling, I recommend finding a quiet place and trying to suspend judgment while you write. Just let the words come. Don't worry about your handwriting or your spelling. This is a really powerful tool for letting go of thoughts and feelings that you don't need to carry anymore. Sometimes it can also be powerful to burn what you write in a safe way. You can put a candle inside a big metal bowl and then burn the pages in it, symbolically letting go of whatever feelings aren't serving you anymore. So let's face it, sometimes you need to resort to distraction techniques to get through some of the rough times. This can be a good time to binge watch that Netflix series you've had your eye on or to download that audiobook series that your friend recommended. I do, however, recommend protecting your mind and psyche from scary things during your pregnancy, so maybe save those horror movies for another time. Another suggestion is normalize your anxiety. I feel like it's really important to mention that there probably isn't a way to entirely eliminate anxiety from your experience of early pregnancy or your life in general. It's okay to feel anxious and to have fears and concerns. That is perfectly normal. You're in good company and there's nothing wrong with you for feeling anxious. The tools I mentioned here are meant to support you to be able to enjoy your pregnancy and not be totally overwhelmed by anxiety, but it's not realistic to expect yourself to never be anxious. You're a human and there's so much unknown during this phase of life, which is part of its magic, but it's also scary. And that's okay. One thing that I'm learning is it's not about like getting through the challenging experience and being past it. It's about building our internal resilience to handle it. And actually, as a parent, I know that there are so many other anxieties that can come up through the entire experience of parenting. So it's just really useful for us to find tools that help us calm down so that we can navigate life the most calm version of ourselves that we can be. So another suggestion is to get good care. Having a provider that you trust to support you during your pregnancy is hugely important. So finding a physician, midwife, or doula that you resonate with and feel safe with will make a profoundly positive impact on your whole experience of pregnancy. This is especially important for people of color, LGBTQ plus folks, and people with disabilities, and other folks whose experiences fall outside of white, hetero, patriarchal norms. I know many, many people who switch providers at some point in pregnancy. And I also know people who, because of access issues, don't have this option. I strongly recommend looking around in your community for people who support pregnant people. There are so many networks of free or low-cost doula services, and there are also midwives like myself who work on a sliding scale basis. And there are also hospital-based providers who understand how to provide patient-centered care. You just may need to take some extra time to find them. Feeling connected to community has been proven to improve your mental health and your quality of life. You really don't have to do this alone. If you can, reach out to people in your life that you trust and get support. I also know that some people don't have access to community and people who understand a lot about pregnancy. And other folks may choose to keep the news of their pregnancy close to their chests, at least during the first trimester. That's one of the reasons that I created PregnantTogether. So it's an online community to connect and empower people to thrive while nourishing the next generation. If you join our community, you'll get the opportunity to connect with tons of other pregnant people going through similar experiences as you, as well as access to live and recorded content, weekly live Q&As with me, monthly visits with experts specializing in supporting pregnant folks, and so much more. You can learn more about joining PregnantTogether here. If you want more, check out some of the extra resources that I included in the PDF that will also support you in navigating first trimester anxiety.